Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on this ChangeNerd webcast. We have Rome Chopra, who is one of the co-founders of Ziplyne, which is an in-app guidance technology software company. So Rome, thank you so much for being with us today.
Brian, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. So Rome, just to get the conversation started, in your opinion, what's been the evolution of digital user adoption? Can you
Yeah,
walk us through the evolution?
of course. The evolution has changed significantly over the past 5 to 10 years, and what it involves is user adoption. It talks about how users adopt a technology, a digital interface within their workspace or as a customer or as any end user.
Mhm.
So the whole evolution starts with how this was solved before, right? Technology really didn't have to be measured in adoption until it became a full SaaS model. Because when you had on premise solutions and those types of things, it was just, I'm going to sell you the software. I don't really care if you use it because we're just going to make sure that we support the software as itself. But if you use it or not, that's fine. Now, since it's delivered in a SaaS model, that whole user adoption phrase has become such a more like increased in importance.
You
So
did.
that's where the technologies specifically around this have come to shape, right? So
Mhm.
you have video tutorials, text documents, PDFs, in classroom training, in-person support. Those are the types of things that currently shaped user adoption.
Mhm.
And now we're seeing a trend and a model of how do you make that scale? So your training manuals, your sandbox environments, your PDFs, your video tutorials, they're only going to take you so far in a blended learning model. But when you're talking about 10,000 users and you have to roll out new systems or new processes, it changes the whole equation. So it started off with just being a phrase, and now it's being really thought after in these enterprises of something that has tangible impact and there's a real ROI to having user adoption.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and especially now when everyone's working virtual,
Yep.
like you can really save time, in my opinion, with the in-app guidance technology because not only are project teams using it to implement a certain technology or solution, but when you think about sustainability, because sooner or later that project team has to go away, how is
Yep.
the business going to manage the ongoing maintenance of this particular solution? This
Mhm.
is a perfect reason why companies should use it. Yeah. So Rome, thinking about the needs of a project team, what are some of the core signs or signals that would indicate that like a team would need this type of technology?
Yeah, great. So I'll first start off with describing why a solution like this even exists.
Yeah.
And the scenario that I'll give or the analogy I'll give is that if you have ever tried to jailbreak your iPhone, right, and you customize it to such an extent, Apple doesn't support it. So how I look at this model is that enterprise software has become like your jailbroken iPhone.
Yep.
You customize it to such an extent that then you try to go back to the main vendor that sold you that software, and they're saying, hey, you customized it, now it looks so different, you're on your own. We
Mhm.
have some support materials to help you, but you have to build your own materials to be able to get your own employees or your users or your customers up to speed.
Absolutely.
And so this shift in the model has really occurred where IT departments are not focused on building necessarily their own in-house applications. They're licensing more third-party SaaS and bringing it internally to customize it to meet the business requirements or processes of their business.
Yep.
So that change in the model of used to have a portfolio of applications that were mainly in-house, ingrown, and now there's a dichotomy of build versus buy.
Hmm.
Because of that shift, you're seeing training teams, L&D, right?
Yeah.
Customer success, CIOs, whoever you think about from that perspective now gets involved. So where there's a change in people, process, or software, that's where Zipline or some type of in-app guidance technology really comes to light.
Yeah.
So if I had to sum it up, it would be like a dynamic workforce where there's going to be high churn or turnover, lower user adoption that you're already seeing across, like you've just implemented Salesforce, but you're not getting that adoption that you would hope for.
Yeah.
Um, there's no scalable delivery for various user roles, right? So, you create materials in one go of videos and text, but now you need to make it persona based, and you have to make it super contextual. And if you're operating at a global scale, you have to do it by department by department, to team by team, language by language. It gets really complicated.
It does.
So where executives and leadership realize as the highest trigger is where there's some type of level of new technology that's being introduced or existing technology that's being updated, that really changes where they start to think about, okay, we need another way to do this. So I was saying where executives and leadership realize how important the whole user lifecycle is. One is introducing new users, then it's empowering existing users to become power users, and then supporting those users as the underlying application or technology evolves. A lot of the other technologies out there, like we're talking about with video tours, text documents, PDFs, why I say they're in the blended learning models, because they serve as core purpose.
They do.
But with the dynamic nature of the world, as you're seeing with the core applications evolving or the users evolving in their technology skill sets, it's not able to keep up. And that's some of the trigger points that really highlight to leadership that there has to be a different way to solve this problem. And it's always going to keep existing because the lag is there between how people are documenting these things, right? The changes in processes, changes in software, changes in the technologies, et cetera. And then how you're going to articulate those changes to your end users.
Yeah.
So you need that middleware, that middle layer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the in-app guidance piece, right? To really fit it in. So the triggers are what I mentioned, but if you wanted to sum it up, it's people, process, and software. And if there's dynamic natures in any of those, an in-app guidance solution or technology would be the way to go about it.
I love it. I love it. So, so Rome, you kind of hinted at it, but let's, for the audience, what is Ziplyne?
Sure. So Ziplyne is a digital adoption platform, and digital adoption platforms have just come about as a term. What it means is that you have a technology that sits on top of any existing software to guide and navigate your users through to help them adopt that technology as an end user. So we like to say Ziplyne is your guide on the side, your interactive guide on the side. When you go to any software and you're an employee, you'll always have a guide there that pops up and shows you how to navigate that technology, right? So the thesis that we kind of came about to think about Ziplyne was your users come to an application or any digital interface. They pretty much know what they want to achieve. They just don't know how they're going to do it. Yeah. And the how is what Ziplyne responds to. We take your users on a journey from point to point, just like a real zip line. You have a terrain, which is unknown, and then you have the line that actually takes your user or your rider from point A to point B. So we do the same thing, but flip it now onto your actual software. So every software has a digital interface, and we're able to help your user navigate with the shortest time and the most efficient manner. And we bridge that divide on any of the digital interfaces and digital business processes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What's the implementation process like?
Yeah, so the implementation, we like to really hone in on, it really depends on how many processes you are trying to digitize using Ziplyne, right? So if you're sitting on top of Salesforce, how many core processes do you have that you want to be able to create in-app guides for? So we break it down and we scope it out. First, we take a more consultative approach because we realize there's no one-size-fit-all approach to adoption. That's the first part. And the second thing is every company has different requirements.
That's true.
And until they actually start to get in the trenches and really think about these things, they might not have an idea necessarily up front of how long this is going to take. So what we like to say is that we're going to help you in a consultative way understand what is your core. Once you get through the core, then we'll build out everything else along the way. But where can you see the immediate ROI, right? So if you have guides that are focused on the onboarding of new software, great. If you have guides that are going to bring your users up to speed with new training, fantastic. If you look at support tickets and where your biggest support tickets are coming, you can actually take the guides and create them so that there's ticket deflection.
Yeah. So
look at those areas of impact, onboarding, training, and support, and measure those processes internally so you can figure out where you want to start. So if you think about the implementation as a whole, it's scoped out on, we sit together with you, you understand, and we understand your process. Then we give you best practices in order to execute that, and we come up with a timeline. Because we can go enterprise wide, we like to sit on top the entire portfolio of an enterprise and
Yeah.
their applications. ServiceNow, Workday, Salesforce, Oracle, you name it.
Yeah.
Anything that's web-based could have a zip or a Zipline on top of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you may have hit on this, but so what's uniquely different when you compare, Zipline compared to other in-app technology organizations?
Yeah, great. So, Brian, when it comes to this in-app guidance technology, what we found is that there's been a core focus by the competition and the alternatives out there to focus on how the end user is going to interact with your software,
Yeah.
right? Like the end user who's playing back that guide, who's getting the help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously status quo. Like that's the norm.
Yeah.
Zipline focuses on the other community, which is the creator community, the admins. We want to make their lives easy to create these guides. Otherwise, you're going to have stale content for your end users.
Yeah.
So we've identified that the core in order to making your end user experience super, super great is that you have to be able to empower your creators to make these types of decisions without having technical ability,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
if they do have technical ability, they need to be aware of what that is. So we make it very clear cut in like an assembly line type manner so that when we're working with the enterprise, we know this is what this persona is going to do. This is what this persona is going to do. This is what this persona is going to do in the creator side or in
Mm-hmm.
that admin community. So because we've given this divide and conquer strategy, we've seen that the companies that are using us are able to update, maintain, and that whole upkeep of the application is minimal. We focus on, yes, we've already made the guides really easy for you to create
Yeah.
and already easy for your end users. But as you know, with any software, there's always upkeep. We wanted to reduce that overhead that you would have to probably incur by hiring new employees just to manage this application and power our technology to solve those because we already have diagnostics and workflows internally built in.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because usually when an organization first purchases some in-app guidance technology, it's you have your super users. There's a
Yep.
core people, 1 to 3 people who are really using it. But your approach allows a more decentralized model where you can have several people in each business unit, and that's
Mhm.
the community of creators. I love that. It's a sustainable model. I love that.
And
Um,
And to that point, Brian, what I would want to mention is that we're actually empowering the enterprises that we're working with to set up their own user groups so they can be more self-sufficient.
exactly.
And we have this term that we use internally, and now our customers are adopting it called Zipsters. So
Zipster.
Zipsters are anyone that are creating zips or feel a part of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so one clarification I'd like to make on my earlier point is that even though the implementation is 1 to 3 months, et cetera, really the zip creation side of it can be done in 2 weeks. A lot of it goes down time-wise into the strategy and the planning. Because when you're working with these enterprises, they don't want to just roll out things immediately. They
Yeah.
want to have phase by phase by phase and have standard communication plans in between as change management professionals
Exactly.
so that every user is educated and there's a whole cyclical process involved. We could just, let it out of the floodgate from day one, but
Yeah.
we know that when you're working with the enterprises, it has to be a phase by phase approach.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. There's a phrase now, the future of work. And I think the future of work is here. It's like current work
Yeah,
in
yeah.
my mind. But how do you see in-app guidance technology impacting the nature of work now and in the future?
Yeah. So I would look at this a few different ways, Brian. Gartner has estimated that 70% of enterprises or companies will be using a DAP or a DAS, a digital adoption platform, digital adoption solution, by
Yeah,
the year 2025.
I agree.
So that's really powerful. And this just came out like right before, I think it was like November of December of last year.
Hmm.
So Bill Kirst, a thought leader in the digital transformation space,
Yeah,
and very 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 well known individual, he said that the way that you think about technology right now, and just an idea that they're throwing out there,
yeah,
the adoption is directly correlated to the depth of the employee experience or the employee engagement.
it is.
So if you're really focused as an organization, the future of work is highly coupled with optimizing employee experience.
Hmm.
And we were always focused on customer experience up until now, right? Like all these companies out there really focused on customer experience, customer experience. How do you reduce the touch points? How do you reduce the first contact resolution? Now the focus has shifted internally. How can you optimize that employee experience? And as we have seen this evolve, we're
Yep.
noticing that in-app guidance is a huge piece or component of that employee engagement, employee experience side. And the last way I would address this is that automation is definitely here to stay, but the key element of the automation is, doing the manual tasks, but there's still a lot of inputs that are required from the human angle,
Hmm.
right? Like, you won't be able to predict necessarily what date I have to put in. I'll have to still write in my date in the field. So the point there is that where you're talking about the future of work, yes, there's going to be high levels of automation, but for those manual pieces that are still relying on the digital interface, like those fields where you have to enter in information, you won't be able to automate those processes because you still need that input.
Yeah.
Um, there is going to be the need for digital adoption platforms or in-app guidance. So as you see, more technologies are going to try to automate, and more workforces and more companies as we go into this future of work are going to rely more on automation. There's always going to be, in my opinion, a dependency on a degree of manual inputs. And that's just going to keep increasing. And as that happens, you're going to need more guidance, more data validation, and those types of things that can be obviously checked and provided by a DAP or a DAS.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Rome, this has been a great conversation, and I think one that will greatly inform the change management community, the ChangeNerd community as well, because in-app guidance technology is just something that we as change management practitioners, we need to be knowledgeable about. We need to be knowledgeable about. Rome, how can people contact you and the team?
Yeah, great. So you can reach out to us directly at sales@zipline.com. And then from there, we'll channel with the right specialist. And the other way is that you can also go to our website, www.zipline.com. Brian, just to let you know, we do have partner channels available so
Yep.
that if you're a change management professional and you would like to get certified on our platform and really understand the use cases and the value that we can help you bring back to your organization, yeah, we're more than happy to have those conversations. And we want to be tightly coupled with the ecosystem of change management and digital transformation experts and professionals.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rome. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian.